Yo, what's poppin', Bagel Bros, and welcome back to another Patreon rant. If you want one of these, give me $5 or $10 on Patreon. This one comes from Bedoofus, who says, what are your thoughts on the story of the Gigaleak itself? You never talk about them in the video. Now, I'ma be real with you. I have spent an ungodly amount of time redoing this rant. And the reason why is because it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, ever since the video came out, and my thoughts are kind of jumbled, kind of everywhere, and it's taken a long time to really get them in order, enough so that I can, speak my mind about them. Typically, I don't really give a shit, honestly. I am borderline incoherent in most of my rants, and I don't even listen back to them, but but this is one of those rare exceptions where I want to be at least a little coherent, at least make a little sense. So I'm going to be straight up with you. If you haven't seen my 2-hour video on the Nintendo Gigaleak, you are going to get extremely lost extremely quickly. I mean, you can try your best to keep up if you want, but this is for people who have seen that video and just want to know my perspective on everything. And I'll be blunt with you from the very beginning, this is mostly going to be a Helix Chamber, Ganix, and Team Space World defense video. Because a lot of people in the comments have been shitting on them, and I don't think the core criticisms are necessarily unfair in a lot of instances. Some of them are, some of them aren't, but I think that the attitude is what really bothers me, where even if the core criticisms are fair, just the way that they're said and the level of spite with which they are communicated, I can't really get behind, which is why I'm making this video to sort of clear the air on that. So, this video was inspired by Frederick Knudsen, largely, which is where we get to why I didn't put a lot of my own opinions in the video. Because something I really respect about Frederick Knudsen's work is that he tells the story just on its own. He lets the story tell itself, almost. So, it's very dry, but, he's just a good storyteller. So he doesn't need to buoy it with his own perspective. The story tells itself, and it is sort of open-ended in a way. Frederick Knudsen won't just give you his opinion on it. He'll just tell the story, and I really respect that about it. It betrays a level of confidence in the story itself. This knowledge that the story itself is so interesting that he doesn't need to, add his own opinion to it, because the story is just that good. And I felt like the Gigaleak video was my chance to try that type of storytelling. And that is, I still think, at its core, the right decision for this story. Because it's a story with a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that you can have an opinion about. Some of it is important. Some of it is responsible disclosure, ethical hacking, misuse of children's data. Zamis Clark gets arrested multiple times in the story, has his, life on the line, his freedom on the line. There are serious things in the story, but a lot of it is really not that serious. I'ma be real with you. A lot of it is a lot of bullshit drama about Pokemon, beta Pokemon specifically. And I came at it from the perspective of thinking it was interesting that people cared so much. That people cared so much about these sprites. About these games, that they were willing to just completely, tear each other to shreds, dox people over all of this. It is a crazy story, and I care about the story, but not because I'm necessarily one of the people who thinks like, oh, these are terrible people. Oh, how dare they hoard the protos, as people say, free the protos. I don't really care in that way. I care more in the sense of being intrigued that it happened. But when you tell an extremely dramatic story, even if I don't really come at it from the perspective of, super caring, like when beta Pokemon are withheld, at the same time, like, I still do want to make it dramatic. I still want to make it watchable. And so when you tell an extremely dramatic story where a bunch of people, where some people do things that are wrong, inevitably you get a comment section that is extremely fierce towards them, especially considering that it is so open to interpretation that I don't really make my perspective clear. And something interesting about this is that for a lot of my past videos, let's say my anime content, I always made my opinion clear, because the point is that I am giving my opinion. And so, even if I was utterly, even if I failed to sway their opinion, which I was generally pretty good at, but even if I failed at swaying their opinion or making them at least understand my side, they would still have to approach it with a level of respect if they were to anticipate me listening to them. They still had to respect my opinion if I was going to hear them out. And so typically you got a lot of people trying to get me to understand their side, knowing that it countered mine, knowing that it was against the paradigm of that comment section. But with this video, people will say things that I patently disagree with, or, there are things about it that I don't really like, but as if I would co-sign it, or as if I wasn't extremely likely to disagree with it. Now, I don't think it's impossible to figure out where I stand in the video itself. I don't come at things from an unbiased perspective. I think that being unbiased is impossible, and because of that, I don't really try to eliminate it from my videos. I do try to tell things accurately, but what I deem accurate will inevitably be shaped by my worldview. And so, inevitably, once again, I'm not trying to completely erase bias from my videos, because I think it is kind of a losing battle. I appreciate that some journalists do, that Frederick Knudsen does, but I don't really see it that way. And so people are able to pick up on, what my opinion on things is. But, some people don't, because in this video in particular, I do a pretty good job of hiding my biases. And, I do think, I want to be careful here, because I don't want to make it out like I'm intentionally lying in my videos, because I'm not. I'm telling the story as I think is most accurate, and that is my top priority at any given time. But, for example, I don't think 4chan looks particularly good in that video. I really don't. A lot of people in the comments do. A lot of people side with 4chan. I don't. And so I choose comments that I think give the general vibe of 4chan at the time, and I don't really think they look good. I'm gonna be real with you, so you could call that biased storytelling. I think it's accurate storytelling, but some people would show it differently. That's just part of the game. Another thing that I think is relevant to this discussion is another, ironically, a Frederick Knudsen thing. He said this on an episode of the official podcast, where he said that the internet flattens things. So if you see a post, you are reading it in the present. You are experiencing what it says in the present. But that post could have been 10 years ago. People could have, that person could have completely changed their worldview. And the same thing I think is true for YouTube videos, and this video in particular. Most of the big things in it happened some 5 odd years ago at this point. At the very least, 4.5, nearing 5. The people, and in fact, a lot of it happened even earlier. And so, the people have moved on. And I put this in a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, but I really did underestimate how much residual spite there was. I couldn't really fathom people caring about it as much as they do, even though obviously that is shown in the story, but I didn't imagine people would still care after all this time. I guess the fundamental disconnect that I have is that I don't think it's a super morally reprehensible action to withhold a beta Pokemon from the public. It's not that big a deal. You're not killing anyone. You're not gonna completely ruin someone's life. You aren't even really entitled to that data in the first place. And so I don't hate anyone if they withhold the prototype Pokemon. Furthermore, most of the people have, if not agreeable reasons for doing so, understandable reasons for doing so. And so I can't see them as malicious either. But on top of that, it's been years, and people involved in the story will freely admit their fault in it. So let me break all this down with an example. The person who I think has been most slighted by the comments section, the most smeared by the comments, which is Ganix. People really hate Ganix in this story. The reason why is because, to give the briefest rundown, Ganix was given this prototype data by Zamas Clark. He was clearly not the right person for the job. He was extremely nervous about it. And so he drip-fed some of it. He wasn't comfortable giving away all of it, but he was comfortable giving away parts of it. He gave away the, interpreted versions of those assets, of all the assets from the raw files he had. But he kept the source code that he was given. He just gave out assets from it. However, people people don't like that he withheld that. I'm explaining this like shit, but basically that's the core conundrum. Another thing people are upset about is that whether he intended it or not, I don't think he did. When he came clean about everything, he said that he had given away everything he had, which was not true. He still had source code, had it at one point. He deleted everything from his computer, according to him, and I do believe him on that. But he had it at one point and did not give it away. But I do believe that in his mind, he had given away everything. He had given away the interpreted assets from that code. He didn't think the code itself was particularly important, whereas obviously people disagree. But it is completely understandable why he acted the way he did. He had moral qualms in the first place with giving away this data because he works in cybersecurity. So he knows firsthand what, leaking data like that can entail, what kind of damage it can cause. Now, personally, I don't weep for Nintendo. I don't feel bad for them, but it's also a lot easier for, me and people in my position to say when you aren't in the industry, when you don't know it intimately. And so, even if I don't necessarily agree with the idea that it's a morally, if it's an immoral act, nonetheless, I understand why someone would come to that perspective, especially someone who is, in the first place, nervous about owning that data. And so to me, I can't really see Ganix as a malicious actor. He's just some fucking guy. Leave him alone. But also, it happened 4.5 years ago, nearing 5 at this point, and a lot of stuff he did was even longer ago. He's just some fucking guy. It's been ages. Leave him alone, you fucking people. It's not that big of a deal. And you know what a lot of people are upset about with Ganix is that they interpret him as having a big ego. He wanted his name attached to it, apparently. He wanted to be the one to drop the data, as it were. He wanted to be attached to Pokeathon, to Helix Chamber, to Team Space World, and whatnot. And people make this accusation about all the parties involved. I don't really see it as that big of a deal. For Helix Chamber and Team Space World, they didn't really know what they were putting their names on. They didn't know that it was hacked material. Also, it is pouring outside, so I apologize in advance if that gets picked up on the microphone. I record these in my garage. Yeah, it is really going outside. But anyway, assuming you can still hear me, people get really mad about them, yeah, wanting to put their names on it, but like once again, they didn't know what they were putting their names on. To me, it's a lot more understandable to put your name on something that isn't hacked material, something that, it seems like you're winning the lottery. Someone just happened to get these files. Like, it just makes a lot more sense to me to put your name on that. Now, for Ganix, maybe it's a bit less understandable. It depends on to what extent he knew if it was hacked. But even then, like, I'm pretty sure Pokeathon, was before it came out. For certain that Zamis had, hacked to get these. Now, obviously, like, I speculate in the video that he may have had an inkling about it even earlier on, but we don't know that. I can't pry into Ganix's psyche. So, we're just gonna have to go off of his words. But, I mean, if I want to extend a bunch of charitability, in fact, I could say, well, he didn't know what he was putting his name on either way. But obviously the fact that he was wanting to redact the data does tell a slightly different story, so I guess I'll leave it at that. But the point is, I just don't think this whole pride thing is that much of a killer blow. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to want to put your name on something special to you. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to want to have an official release for something, and I don't even think it's the worst thing in the world to withhold a public release until that point. I really just don't think it's that big of a deal. And so to see people so spiteful and so angry over it is a bit jarring. It is a bit strange. I thought most of it would just be about Pokeathon. I thought most of the really mean comments would just be about that. Because to me, that is the one part where people were, most wronged. It was, to a certain, like, in a certain sense, to a certain perspective, legit fraud. Like, people donated under false pretenses, and no refunds were offered. Granted, none were, people didn't necessarily, like to our knowledge, nobody wanted a refund, but at the same time, like, just as a matter of principle, they should have been proactively offered through every channel Helix Chamber had access to, and even Pokeathon had access to, I believe, because it happened on Pokeathon, perpetuated by Helix Chamber. These are the people with their names attached. They should be trying everything in their power to make people whole. But at the same time, like, even though that is the worst thing in the story in terms of what the quote unquote hoarding side did wrong, if you wanted to be an idiot about it, at the same time, like, that isn't even what most people seemed to be mad about. More people seemed more mad about Ganix, which very much surprised me. Because to me, I found him pretty endearing throughout the entire story, even though he does have his fuck-ups. Like, I don't think he's fundamentally a bad guy. I really don't. And I think that it's very strange to see people this emotional over Pokemon, even though the entire story has been people getting strangely emotional over Pokemon, to be fair. Like, I probably should have seen it coming. I just didn't expect people to care this long after, I guess, because to me, reading the story, having to make a timeline out of everything, I know that it all happened years ago, and people don't fucking, like the people involved, once again, I mean, Ganix is married now. Dude has a wife. He has his own life to live. Yeah, that's for the most part about it. I guess the last thing, I mean, I kind of got to everything. I mean, I guess the last thing could be people who say they should have just dumped it anonymously. Maybe they should have, but at the same time, people didn't know that it was hacked. Helix Chamber didn't know. Team Space World didn't know. Ganix might not have known, depending on how you interpret it, until March. And then, when he did definitely know, he dropped them anonymously through a friend, no less. In fact, after the video came out, I got into contact with Ganix. Well, he got in contact with me, and we had an email exchange, and it was Ganix's friend who dropped it on 4chan, but it was actually at Ganix's request, so I was a little wrong about that. That wasn't available information at the time. I could have reached out to Ganix, and in retrospect probably should have, but we do know now. And yeah, like, he, after that point, did do exactly what the people in the comments want him to. Yeah, it's just a really, like, I don't know, to me, dropping something anonymously is what you do when you know it's illegally obtained material and want to put distance between yourself and it while getting it to the public. But most of the people involved, they didn't fucking know. Ganix might have known. Like, that's it. So it's really, I don't think that's necessarily as reasonable as a request as people may think. Like, sure, in retrospect, yeah, they probably should have. That would have been, might have been better. But at the same time, files do need to be cleaned before you just release them. Like, I didn't get into this in the video, but with the source code leak of Pokemon Blue and Yellow that Team Space World had, I mean, Game Freak employees' fax numbers from the 90s were found in that leak. Like, yeah, they're probably not in use anymore. I mean, definitely not. But at the same time, like, that probably shouldn't be in a leak. Like, that kind of information shouldn't just be readily available to the public. So it makes sense why, once again, people would hoard files for a certain amount of time to clean them. And obviously, like, it wasn't just for that throughout the story. People did it to have these official sorts of releases, and you can have whatever thoughts you want to have about that. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think it's nearly as black and white as people make it out to be. I don't think anyone did as horrible of a thing as people are making them out to be in the comments, except for arguably Helix Chamber with the, fraud. You could interpret it that way. I personally do. I think that it is real fucked up that they didn't proactively offer refunds. But aside from that, I really don't hold any ill will towards anyone involved in the video. And I have, alright, one last point before the storm fucking destroys this garage. I do feel a little conflicted about what to even do about some of the comments, because some of them are really mean, like I said. But obviously, like, it's difficult to say, like, oh, just delete all the mean ones. Well, people are, gonna know. Like, people are gonna figure out if they look back and see their comment. And even then, like, I want people to be free to discuss it. It is disheartening to see people be rude, but I don't want to go, like, full, nuclear option, just delete every comment that's rude. I also don't want to set a precedent where I'm actively moderating my comment section, because I don't look at the comments on the Pokemon video anymore. I see the ones that are, get notified, like, on my phone directly, but other than that, like, I don't actively look at the comments anymore. And I don't want to set a precedent where it's like, oh, I moderate every comment. I don't want to commit time to that. I don't want people to expect me to commit time to it. And so it is a bit of a predicament. Some people are really fucking rude to Ganix, and I really hate it, because Ganix commented on the video, and I see people just being a complete dick to him. And it sucks, it really does. No, I don't think he deserves it at all. So I'm still thinking about the best way to tackle that sort of thing. For now, the main thing I want to do is just make videos that I know won't produce that kind of response. That's what I intend to do in the future, but it is, I think, inevitable that someone just gets absolutely shat on in the comments section based on a story I tell, and I don't know, I'm open to suggestions on how to tackle that. What I did do, someone suggested, ironically, one of the people involved in the video, Satomu, suggested I turn on some of YouTube's automatic comment filtering, and I did do that. As far as I can tell, it's not helping things, but like a really fucking transphobic comment got through the filter. So I don't know. That, for now, is the sort of half-hearted solution I'm doing, which is just to turn on some automatic filtering. But, it doesn't feel great, and I'm open to suggestions, like I said. I don't want to go full North Korea on it, but, it doesn't feel great either way. But yeah, that's about it. See ya.